right now. Want to welcome to the program Congressman Blake Farenthold. And Congressman, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Good to be with you, Ken.
Well, listen, I guess before I even ask any questions, just generally speaking, your thoughts on what transpired in the House this afternoon.
Oh, it's been a roller coaster ride of a day. It started off with, I think, a huge loss for liberty in the Supreme Court. Then we made a grab to bring integrity back to government by trying to get to the bottom of this fast and furious thing by holding Eric Holder in contempt. And right now we're getting our rear ends kicked in the congressional baseball game. So it's quite a day.
No kidding. Ups and downs, I suppose. What did you think of the debate? I almost don't even want to call it a debate because it seems like the opponents of the contempt of Congress charge wanted to talk about anything but the actual contempt of Congress charge and why it was being brought forward.
Well, they were sticking to their talking points and trying to obfuscate the issue. And it amazes me that Democrats who have used the contempt power before are willing to turn a blind eye to someone who's clearly misled Congress. And I think had we not held the Attorney General in contempt of Congress, it would have eroded so substantially the oversight power of Congress. The Oversight and Government Reform Committee might as well just pack its bags and go home.
Well, you know, and we actually, I don't know if they packed their bags, but I mean, we did see them leave, which was, you know, again, I don't know what your take on it was, Congressman. I got to tell you, as a voter, I just, look, even if you disagree with the vote, stay in the chamber, vote no. That's my opinion.
Well, and I understand in the cases there's a time for a dramatic gesture, but this really isn't it, and it indicates, I think, a circle the wagon mentality that has permeated the Democrat Party, and that's just not good for America. It's going to not only was it a poor reflection on today's vote, but I think it's something that's holding true throughout this Congress with an unwillingness to work with the Republican majority.
Well, I have to say, I think that you're right to a large degree, you know, and particularly focusing on Fast and Furious. You're right. This isn't a Republican versus Democrat issue. This isn't right versus left. This isn't even Obama versus Bush. You know, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it 100% isn't. And I remember early on in this investigation, the outrage the Democrats had. I think you were there at one of those first hearings when even the Democrats were upset about this. And now there's a focus on not what facts are, but for the procedure. And I don't think there was anything wrong with the procedure, but I'm also a believer that when you don't have the facts on your side, you obfuscate and go for procedure.
Well, let's talk about the procedure for a second here, because I heard a number of your colleagues complain about a rush to judgment. A, this subpoena has been out for 8 months. B, the administration decided to use executive privilege a week ago. Why didn't they just tell us when the subpoena was issued back in October, we're not going to provide these documents because we believe that they fall under executive privilege?
And, the executive privilege thing is the contradiction associated with that is just staggering. There's sworn testimony from Mr. Holder. The White House wasn't involved. The president's gone on Univision and said he didn't know about it. Well, the Supreme Court definition, or the court definition of executive privilege, says it holds to the president and his closest advisors and doesn't extend into executive agencies. So if they're claiming executive privilege, the president or his closest advisors had to be involved for it to apply. They can't have it both ways.
Absolutely. And I saw that even on CNN online, they had a piece by the author of a book called Executive Privilege and another colleague, experts in the field. And they say, ultimately, the president's argument fails. That exactly as you say, if he is going to invoke executive privilege, then that means that there was communication within a much closer circle to the president than what has been acknowledged to date. You can't have it both ways, as you say.
I to some degree, the longer I spend in Washington, the more cynical I become, which actually kind of saddens me. But the fact that they've got a full court press on keeping these documents out of the public eye really concerns me as to how bad must whatever is in there be that the president, for the first time in his presidency, is invoking executive privilege. And they pulled out all the stops here, and I just don't think it's a matter of principle here. I just don't.
If it were, to me, if this were a matter of principle, I mean, again, the arguments that we've heard is that there was no wrongdoing by the Obama administration, that this all started under President Bush and it was stopped by Attorney General Eric Holder. Well, look, release the documents, and maybe it'll confirm that that story that we're hearing. But
I guarantee if I were being investigated by the Department of Justice or whomever, and I had documents that cleared me, I'd be posting them on the internet within moments.
Well, I think that's what most people would do, which I think is why, at the end of the day, all of the obfuscation we heard from people like Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer today, I think it's going to fall flat because Americans, and I think this probably goes back to Watergate, Americans are somewhat suspicious of our government. When it comes to the government saying we're not going to turn over documents, I think the default position for Americans, by and large, is I think you should turn them over. And in this case, where, again, there's no real argument from the Democrats as to why they should not, other than this vague, well, it's illegal to turn these documents over, I don't think that sells with the American people.
I don't think it does either. And, the documents, we're not saying they necessarily have to be released publicly. We would settle for what's called an in-camera review, where either members of Congress on the committee or the staff review them. I mean, that was something I think Chairman Issa would have been willing to accept.
I've heard that, and again, it seems like that wasn't really an offer. We also heard complaints, Representative, that General Mukasey was never ordered to testify, that Kenneth Melson was never called to publicly testify. Were they asked? Did Representative Cummings, ask to have these folks there? I mean, I know he brought it up during the hearings, but did he ever formally request this?
Yeah, there were some requests, and there were quite a few people deposed that weren't actually brought in front of the committee, and that doesn't mean that we can't continue the investigation. But I think Trey Gowdy made the salient comment in the committee when we were reporting out contempt that about the time you turn 10 or 12, the excuse everybody else is doing it doesn't work. Yeah,
well, absolutely. Well, listen, Congressman, again, when it comes to this morning's decision, this morning's news about Obamacare being struck down, I mean, ultimately, if you are not in favor of Obamacare, you've got one option now, and that is to replace the president in November and elect a Congress that will repeal this, right?
And listen, I'm deeply concerned about the broadening of the tax power. One of my colleagues from Texas, Judge Carter, says, I think what we ought to introduce is a bill that in order to have a well-armed militia, every American is required to own a handgun and be trained in how to use it or pay a $5,000 a year tax. I mean, basically the Supreme Court opens the door to that, and that would be constitutional.
That is that is frightening. Do you think that any of your colleagues will offer any sort of legislation to rein in the tax power of your body?
Oh, I think as long as the House, where all tax bills must originate, is in Republican hands, we're in good shape. But I think we've opened the door should control of the House ever shift.
Well, listen, Congressman, again, I really appreciate your time this evening, sir, and hope that we can be speaking with you again very soon.
Anytime, Cam.